Before you get into this video, I just wanted to stop and warn you that in this video I do talk about some very sensitive topics, which include sexual assault and domestic abuse. So if that's something that triggers you, you might want to pause here and discontinue. But if you are going to be okay with that, keep watching to hear my thoughts on Daggermouth. Hi everyone, my name is Vina, aka Miss WOCReader, and welcome back to my channel. I finished Daggermouth a few days ago, and it took me a while to kind of put together all my thoughts about the book. There was so much about this book I didn't see people really talking about, and let's just talk about how this book was controversial. Since the beginning of the year, there's been so much discourse back and forth, and then so many people got excited and rushed to buy the indie version of it when they found out she got the 7-figure book deal, like several of my mutuals did. And I didn't read the indie version. I decided to wait and read the trad version. Shout out to Simon & Schuster Audio for getting me a copy, as well as them giving me the ebook. Now, I feel like there is just so much that people were not discussing when it came to this book. And we saw the whole discourse on Threads where people didn't like the Fake Crate edition, and I'm like, for real, y'all? For 40 days and 40 nights, I saw people arguing about if Shadira was dark skinned or not, even though none of the character art ever gave dark skin. But then Callum was deep skinned and mentioned on page as deep skinned, and nobody had anything to say about how the character art constantly portrays him as very light, to the point where the early character art I saw had him looking white passing. So there was a lot of inconsistencies when it came to descriptions in this book, which I feel like have been beat to death. I read the book. As far as how Shadira is described, we don't get really into her skin tone at all. She's described as brown very early in, and then way later in the book, dark is mentioned, but it didn't say she was dark skinned. It said something looked white against her dark skin. So dark was more used as a comparison in the book. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. Shadira is not dark skinned. She is presumed light skinned, just like her author. But there's just so much more important stuff to talk about when it comes to this book. So I had to kind of sit down and write down my thoughts. If you see me looking off to the side, I'm looking at my laptop because I want to keep things concise and precise. The book follows multiple POVs, though the main characters are Shadira, who is a rebel assassin, and Grayson, who is an executioner and the son of the Maximus. So Daggermouth was pretty enjoyable in the first few chapters. Like, I was really digging like how things were being set up at first. I went into the book skeptical, and I'm just like reading that, and I'm like, maybe I'm actually gonna like it, because the writing was definitely more elevated than similar types of dark fantasy books that I've tried to read, or dark romance books that I've tried to read and had to end up DNFing. She does a good job at sucking you into the story. I will definitely give her props there. Lately, I find with these types of books, a lot of authors like to hop right into the sex and the enemies to lovers, and she doesn't do that. She gives you a little bit of time to breathe and see the characters in their own element. But where it started to lose me at was when we do see Shadira and Grayson start to really interact with each other. So let me just set up the world for you first. In the world, it's called Newfound Haven, and it's a military state split into 3 factions. So you have the Heart, which is where all the elites live, including the Maximus, who is a dictator who reigns down on everybody. The Cardinal is a middle section, which is where all the entertainment is, though only the elite can afford entertainment. So it's basically just a place where, yes, the elites and the non-elites commingle, but it's just basically a part of the elite. And then we have the Boundary, which is the outermost ring, and it's where all the poor people who are suffering live. So from there, you know, it's kind of a basic dystopian setup. I read a few dystopian YA books back in the day. I didn't read Hunger Games though, and I just can't remember why I didn't read Hunger Games. My sister loved Hunger Games though. I do like the idea of a dystopian novel. I think when the setup is good, it's good, and people follow through with the execution, it's great. But they don't always 100% click for me. I think it really does come down to how you set up how the people interact in this space. I remember reading the selection and thinking that was a terrible dystopian because the world never made any sense, and then the romance was so obvious, which this book also had that issue. The world didn't make sense and the romance is so obvious. So we don't get a lot of detail about the boundary. Like, we know it's like slums and the people there are suffering. We don't really know too much about the jobs that regular people do. And from what Shadir tells us, there's no fresh food there. They only eat canned food. They don't have stoves, they have microwaves. That part really didn't make any sense to me. And I'm gonna assume then that they have to work in the factories to be able to produce the canned food. So this is set in the United States, definitely, because somebody else mentioned in their review the gun names are real life gun names that are mentioned in the book from real life. Like, the coding on the guns ties to specific countries. I don't know if the author realized that when she was writing, or she just thought these gun names sound cool. So I'm gonna assume this is the United States, and it doesn't really get into the history of why things broke off the way it did, how this family came into power over everybody, because they've been into power for a few hundred years now. And all of those, that was stuff I was expecting to be answered in this book. You usually expect those types of questions to be answered in book one, but I think that H.M. Wolf focused more on how everybody looked and the aesthetics of this dystopian world, rather than giving us more detail about how the world operates. Because even at one point when Grayson is taking Shadira through the heart and he's explaining stuff to her, he's not really telling her anything that's too much of importance that gives you more insight to the world. But she's taking it like, oh my gosh, he's revealing so much to me. Like, why are you telling me all this? And I'm just like, but he didn't really tell you anything. So it kind of felt like a fantasy world, but nobody has magical powers. I saw somebody kind of describe this as a mafia romance, which makes sense because you have all like the basic things in mafia romance, the rival families and the guns and stuff. I would have loved to actually see some more technology infused in this, because dystopian fiction usually falls under sci-fi. And normally in these types of worlds, I do expect some kind of advanced technology, at least in the hands of the elites. And we could have really used some advanced technology, because people were getting stabbed, they were getting broken bones, they were getting bullet wounds, they were getting these injuries that they should not be able to heal from. But they were healing like Wolverine. It didn't make any sense. Like, I'm like, is this The Boys again? Because people were healing from stuff in a matter of hours that they should not have healed from at all. It would have taken 2 minutes. Like, you would have maybe had to put 2 lines in the book about having a kind of super healing serum that helped the people, and I would have just fell for that. I would eat that up, because otherwise it did not make sense that people were getting beat within an inch of their life and then able to be walking around later on and not have to go to the hospital, not get any proper medical care. None of that really made sense, and that kind of ended up playing into so much of this plot feeling very cartoonish to me. And as far as the technology they do have, it's like the basic technology we have today. They have your standard drip coffee machine, they have your standard stove, your standard ovens and microwaves. Nothing was too out of the ordinary. It almost felt like things were frozen in time, like Cuba, except if it were frozen in time today with modern US appliances. It just, I would have loved a little bit more there, and I'm surprised people are not critiquing that more. I've seen some people say we'll probably get that in book 2. It should have been in book 1. And then let's talk about the romance, because this is a dystopian romance. I feel like a lot of people I saw were very forgiving of this book, who are usually very critical because they love the romance. And honestly, the way my expectations were set up, I thought this book was going to be hornier, because people were promising me spice, and it really wasn't that horny of a book. I've read hornier books. I would say If you are looking for something spicier, Huntsman by Naima Simone is probably going to be your jam, because it is like similar type of world like this, and that's a mafia romance, and that one brings the spice. But yeah, we have obviously Shadira and Grayson as the main characters in the romance, but they don't even have an actual sex scene in this book. I was surprised, especially since I did see a little bit of the promo that she was posting. Like, we first see Shadira with somebody else. So she's with Jameson, who is a rebel, and he and her are fuck buddies. She acts like she has no feelings at all for him whatsoever. She knows he has deep feelings for her, and she just kind of brushes it off. She's okay with going on this mission to go kill Grayson, even though it could be potential suicide, because like she just wants to help her people out, and she kind of just ignores, you know, his feelings. We see them having this very intense sex scene where they say a lot of like hate sex, angry type of stuff to each other, that I find that a lot of authors are doing lately in these types of books, where they're just like hurling angry stuff at each other for no reason, and I guess it's supposed to be like foreplay. I was like, But I will say that she had much stronger chemistry with Jameson, and they just made sense. Whereas, again, Grayson is the executioner. He literally kills innocent people on live TV, at his father's beck and call. And when I say innocent people, it could be like children stealing food. You gotta die on live TV. So Shadira is on the opposite side. While she is an assassin, it seems like she doesn't really kill people like that. And so she's not killing innocent people either. When she's fighting like the Vera officers, who are like these all-seeing officers who just patrol the region. So even if she is like shooting at people, she's not shooting at anybody who's bad. Whereas Grayson literally kills innocent people. But we are supposed to look past that, because deep down, he really doesn't like it. His father is controlling him. He's a good guy overall. He's secretly a rebel who is sneaking people food and other supplies in a very stupid way. Like, that is another thing that didn't make any sense to me. And it comes up later in the book, where he makes sure to tell them, I'm the one who's getting you guys supplies. I have my code on these supplies that are going out to the boundary. And I'm just like, that's dumb though, because then they can trace it back to you, which his father does know it's him the whole time, because his father is one of those all-knowing cartoon villains too. He's just evil to be evil. He sees everything, he knows everything. Like, the rules in this world don't make sense, specifically because like we break them and then abide by them, but it's like a pick and choose type of thing, and he just sees everything anyway, so he knows when you're doing wrong. But back to Grayson and Shadira. We are sold as like this enemies to lovers thing because they are on opposite sides. I feel like we didn't do the best job making Grayson actually appealing. In addition to him being the executioner, while we see Shadira with Jameson, who she does care about a little bit, she doesn't really love, we see Grayson have sex with a prostitute. So he goes to his friend Callum's brothel, and he meets up with this prostitute, and we get this explanation of how she is like a girl who is between worlds, because she knows how to act among the elites, and she's not quite as poor as the people in the boundaries, and she kind of moves between them all. And he has rough sex with this woman, like, and we're told he does it to dominate her, because he wants to have control over somebody. He doesn't care nothing about her. She's just some holes that he can use to his advantage. I don't understand what the purpose of that was. It was really actually gross, especially when I went back and reread it prior to sitting down for this review. Because when I read it the first time, it kind of went over my head a little bit, because I was listening to the audiobook in the car on my way to work. When I went back and reread it with my eyes, I was just like, this is really weird. Because like, he's in there like, take that, and I don't understand how it was supposed to endear us to him, how it was supposed to, how we're then supposed to turn around and root for him and Shadira. Like, it comes up later where they come across this woman and Shadira gets a little jealous and like they have a stupid argument, but that, I don't understand what the point of this was, because it didn't make him look more like a good innocent guy who is just under the control of his father, because he himself is playing into the misogyny that runs rampant in this world by just using this woman as his cum rag. Grayson and Shadira are supposed to be enemies to lovers, right? But almost immediately upon meeting each other, there is this instant attraction, and we are told, not shown, that there's other sides to them that the other person didn't realize. And when I say we are told, and the examples that follow up don't match the seeing another side. And that had me scratching my head. But the biggest head scratcher for me was when Shadira goes to try and kill Grayson, she doesn't take the shot like she should. And then, like, he ends up taking his mask off. And apparently that's the biggest offense you could have in this world is to take your mask off. Which, I forgot. The elite wear these masks. So the elite wear these masks. I never really understood how these masks operated, because the descriptions of them kind of changed between chapters. But only the elites wear these masks, and it's supposed to be this, you're erasing your individuality. You can't ever take your mask off unless it's in front of your spouse, blah, blah, blah. It just serves as a convenience and a contrivance to ultimately hook Grayson and Shadira up, because Grayson takes off his mask, his face is exposed, his face isn't supposed to be exposed to anybody but his spouse. He's engaged to this woman who we never hear from again. Her parents like object, and we never hear from this lady again. But because his mask was taken off in front of Shadira, it's considered really bad. Shadira gets caught by the officers, gets jailed. Like, the 7 people in the jail cell start singing her praises, and then suddenly Maximus comes back and he's like, y'all are gonna get married now that y'all have broken the law. Which doesn't make sense, because one of the laws is also that there's no marriage between factions. And Grayson literally executes a couple for getting married who come from different factions. So we're gonna break an additional law because one law was broken? That doesn't make any sense. And Maximus is just like, because the people really were inspired by her, that's why I want you guys to get married. It's going to bring goodwill to the people. And I'm just like, but you don't care about the people at all. You execute them over every little thing. So I don't understand why we can't just execute her too. Who cares what the people care about? You don't. Because ultimately, your goal is to wipe out the people anyway. And later it's revealed as if it's like something shocking that he's trying to wipe out all the people, but like he pretty much comes across like he wants to wipe out all the people from the start. So that also confused me, acting like that was a big twist to the story. But yeah, so we get this kind of arranged marriage of convenience plot between the rebel and the heir, and it didn't make any sense. And it was just like to force them in proximity of each other. But forced proximity is supposed to bring chemistry, and that just was not here for me. And I don't feel like they had meaningful conversations and interactions while they were in this forced proximity. Shadira gets her own mask. She goes and sits down and has family dinner with these people. Again, she is a terrible assassin, because we don't see any strategic plotting from her at all to try and kill these people, to try and escape, nothing like that. She's sitting down eating dinner, and once again we have to show that Maximus is super evil. How do we show he's super evil? Like, he was beating on his wife and daughter. Like, this was WWE. Like, it's been a while since I read a fight like this. He was punching them, like coming at both of them from all sides. And it was just to show us that he's a big bad. So he's punching at them. He's coming at them from all sides. The family's in an uproar. He's abusive to everybody. He's abusive to his wife. He's abusive to his daughter. He's abusive to Grayson. And I actually got to the point where sometimes he would come on page and I would just start laughing because his antics were so over the top. There was no nuance whatsoever. Now, over to his daughter Lyra. She is essentially the Heart's PR person. Like, it's basically a fake vanity job that he gives her to give her something to do, and he like yells at her like, this is something I gave you to do, you should be grateful, blah blah blah, and holds it against her. And she just kind of complains, but also just deals with it because she's a woman, she can't do anything. She is in love with Grayson's best friend Callum, who is the brothel owner, who is the only other black person that we come across in the book. And Callum, he's a good guy. Like, he's probably one of the better characters in this book, which is a shame because he doesn't make it to the end of the book, which really pissed me off because I'm just like, really? We lost one of the better characters in this book for no reason at all. Like, everybody else can survive getting beat within an inch of their life, and he had to go. So that happened. But what also made it weird in that he doesn't make it to the end of the book, we got the most lengthy sex scene in the book between him and Lyra. So he and Lyra, they snuck around like 5 years ago, and then they were like, we can't be together because my father and because it would hurt Grayson and blah blah blah. So they've just been kind of talking and stealing kisses here and there while still pining for each other and not being with anybody else since. And I understand why Lyra hasn't been with anybody else since. I didn't really understand why Callum hasn't been with anybody else since. But anyway, they have been pining for each other for 5 years. And then they get this really lengthy sex scene where he gives her 5 orgasms and he counts it out for her. And they give each other all this sappy stuff. And Lyra gives us this women's empowerment speech that really makes no sense because you haven't done anything empowering all book. Like, it was the most white feminism thing. Like, oh my gosh, so much of this book was just coded. Like, I felt strangled by the white feminism in this book because a lot of it was just very hollow and meaningless stuff that look like empowerment but aren't really doing anything. So she gives a speech about how strong she is. Like, he's like, I can't believe you've gone through all this harshness at the hand of your father and him pimping you out to the highest bidder and stuff, and still you've survived. And that, like, she's like talking to him about how you have to do what you have to do and rise above and blah blah blah, but she doesn't do anything. He does more than her because he's actually out here, you know, trying to make the world a better place for other people who are poor, where she's just moping and sobbing and wishing that she was one of the poor people because she's oppressed also in her place. And that's the thing about the elites. All the women are severely oppressed. They're property. And it, like, the way in which they are treated also doesn't make any sense when we cycle back to the end, which I will get into shortly. So there is this ceremony called the vow ceremony, which is supposed to be where Grayson and Shadira are married. And we find out that at the vow ceremony, they take their vows and then have to consummate in public on live TV in front of everybody. Like, everybody being the elites, because apparently over the boundaries they don't have the TVs to see this stuff. So again, I don't understand the purpose. But also what they find out is that nobody really talks about, although it should be common knowledge, is that after they consummate live, then a bunch of people get to gang rape your wife. And I feel like sexual violence was constantly used as a threat in this book. Constantly. And it just didn't make any sense why it was constantly used as a threat in this book, because at the end of the day, yes, I understand sexual violence is a threat in violent part, like it is a threat that is used a lot in war and in very oppressed spaces, but the way in which they were doing it like it came across very hollow. I don't feel like the care was put into that it needed to be put into, and it just didn't make any sense, because this is a culture that we're also told like really is into purity, but then you have the dictator just selling his daughter off to the highest bidder. Not even the highest bidder, actually, because like he was forcing her to have sex with these officers, some who were of lower ranks, like just to keep them loyal. Like, you couldn't get a regular prostitute to do that. That didn't make any sense to me. But anyway, so we have these rape threats, and Lyra decides to finally step up and do something, and she organizes the elite women, and at the vow ceremony, they all take off their fancy gowns and their masks and stand strong against the men. And when I say stand strong, like they literally just stood there and did nothing. And I was so confused. I actually burst out laughing when I read that too, because what? Like, all it took, like, because we act like this is some real big act of defiance, and I'm like, all it took was for you guys to stand up and say no, and we wouldn't have so much violence? What is going on here? Like, I had to pause and just give myself a good laugh, and I shouldn't be laughing at people's pain like that, but like, it was so ridiculously stupid. And then we have Lyra and Grayson's mother reveal that she is the Python, and she's a big bad rebel, and she's like known in the streets, and she decides to kill him, and I'm like, the Maximus, and I'm just like, but what was the reason? Because if you were this big bad rebel the whole time, why didn't you take him out years ago? Especially after the stuff with your daughter. You were just getting beat on all the time, and now you are the hero who is known in the streets as the Python, and you're this big bad. Like, oh my gosh, like, it was so ridiculous, and I'm surprised people aren't talking about it more. It was the worst reveal, right next to like the not dead brother being alive, which I didn't really talk about too much because he's like in the story but not really, and it doesn't really impact the story in any way when he comes, when it's revealed he's alive. It's just like a shock value thing. But yeah, I hated that scene so much. It was so stupid. And somebody said that this feels kind of like a Starfire x Nightwing fanfic, and I would not be surprised, because now that they mention that, I am seeing the similarities here. And I wish this did have the writing of Starfire and Nightwing, because they actually have a good story. Like, DC knows how to do characters. Here, I don't feel like I really got to know anybody. Like, I just know everybody got tattoos and everybody likes to wear dark clothes. And I feel like tattoos and dark clothes were a sign you were a badass, maybe up to the 90s, but in the 2020s, when most people wear dark clothes and most people have tattoos, that's not cutting it. I would have loved to see this really be a fully realized, fully developed world, because as much as people are hyping this book as it's this masterful fantasy, it's the best thing they've ever read, it did not deliver on that. I really thought that, I'm using fantasy again when this is not really a fantasy, but it just keeps getting, people keep pushing it into the fantasy box. I really thought that this book had a lot of potential. If H.M. Wolf would have taken just a little bit more time to really explain things, really map out and develop the world, get herself a little story Bible and write things down and figure things out, because it just comes across as very surface level, as very hollow. And as much as people were trying to debate the blackness of this book, I'm like, there's no black culture in here at all. Even the feminism doesn't come from a black woman, like, experience. So I was just confused, because this feels very raceless world, and if she would have never told me that nobody was brown, I wouldn't have known. And I'm not even fully opposed to that. Like, you don't have to really get into things that would be specific to Black culture in the book. But then I just don't understand why everybody, for the most part, was defaulted to white. Then when you do get these brown characters, it's weird because we just ignore it, because race has no play in this society at all, from what we see at least, because we're not really even told how you get into the elites versus how you got into the boundary. Like, anyway, maybe I am putting too much, maybe I just expected too much in this book and I should have just been here for the vibes. But I had to get some of that stuff off my chest. If you read Daggermouth, I am interested in hearing what your thoughts were. What exactly did you love about it, if you did love it? If you were caught on the fence, I would love to hear about that too. Like I said, I was really enjoying it at first, and then it just, like, it went off the rails. But I don't want to leave this on a negative note, so I did want to share some books that I am excited about reading, or I am currently reading, or I've read. I think if you want a true enemies to lovers, you should read Empire of Hanging Swords by R.R. Egal. It's more of an epic fantasy with a strong romantic subplot. I will leave the link in the description box below. You can find it on Amazon. I need to reread this because I need to finish book 2, but this truly felt like a real enemies to lovers story for me. It is like a little bit more slower paced, but very satisfying. If you just want something horny and dark, you can read A Seduction of Dreams and Nightmares by A.J. Locke. This is very horny, this is very dark, we have a lot of sex, there's underground clubs and stuff. I ate this book up. This is more, like I said, not too serious of a book. If you just want like vibes, this had it. I'm currently reading A Day of Breath by Darby Cox. I put this down a couple of months ago because I was reading it and I was struggling with the first few chapters because I just, like, I don't know, I wasn't in the headspace to read it, but I picked this back up and I am really enjoying it so far. This is Not With a Bang by Temi O. Temi O usually does these dystopian stories. I read her first one, Do You Dream of Terror 2, and I enjoyed that one for the most part, so I'm very curious about this one. And then last I have The Inevitable Undoing of Zahara Douglas by Leslie Penelope, which I'm super excited about because it's a Y2K set fantasy. So if you like this video, make sure and hit that like button. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!